Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is part two of the show, and I hope everyone that was with me on the part one could make it back in or can make it back in. So apparently, I got my sound got cut off. I did nothing to change the settings. So I'm back now with part two. I'm going to give it a minute to see if anybody comes and joins me in the chat since I had to do a restart here. Hopefully you can hear me. And if any of you are here, if any of you have come and joined me and found this part two of my rudely interrupted previous show, which I did nothing to change the sound, but I appreciate everybody for letting me know in the live chat that the sound cut out. So it looks like it cut out for about 5 minutes of the show. So if you're here and hearing this, if you don't mind and can just tell me in the live chat, if you can hear me, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll just keep going and we'll see if anybody can't hear me and you let me know. Actually, I have a way to check this. Bear with me. It's never really happened to me before, so hold on. Let's just see if we have sound. Okay, looks like we're good. Checked on my phone. All right, so disregard that whole previous. So it may take a while for people to come back in. And again, disruption happened, not of my doing. So let's get going. So if you're just joining me now, my part one of this very same live got cut off. However, enough was still recorded. Hi, Rita. I checked on my phone. I can hear myself. Can you hear me? I hope. So it looks like I went in and it cut off about, hi, again, somebody just let me know, like thumbs up if you hear me. I checked on my phone and I can hear me, but hopefully you can too. So this is perfect. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Okay, sound is good. All right, so pretty much I'm just starting. I was just telling people why. Hey, sorry, part one got cut off. But you know what? Thank you so much, guys. And gosh, if you didn't say anything, I would have kept going on and on and on. So thank you. God bless each one of you that let me know this sound was gone. I did nothing to change it. Somebody just gave me the, the cane off of the stage. I guess they didn't want me to talk about what I was talking about, or it was just a fluke. Who cares? Anyway, good point. The point is I went back to look and see where I got cut off. And it actually cut off, the sound cut off at a perfect time, because now that part one video did the whole backstory of the bridge, topics that I was going to get to. And actually, I was just starting to talk about the show that I came here for this week with is the Varangians, Ells Date Palms. So I had just explained who the Varangians were. So anybody missing that, go back to my part one show. I'm not going to go back over that again. But what's cool is that I was talking about the Ells, and I was just about to define the Ells when my sound got cut off. And this is perfect timing because now I kind of know where to talk from. Okay, and if I kind of overlap, repeat something, just bear with me because I have no idea where we're at, other than knowing that I can start with the L now of what an L is. So what I was starting to say is an L, if you look at this picture, and I have more slides coming up to show better pictures. See that person holding that stick? It looks very medieval-like. That's because the source of that is from about 800, I think somewhere around 800 AD, maybe a little before, in a manuscript. And what that person is doing, they have a stick, and it has to do with fabric, because fabric, is a very important part of the trade route, obviously, like we hear of the Silk Road of China and all of that. But that measurement, more or less, is taking L like elbow almost, right? Is a measurement going from the elbow to like their longest finger, which would have been like the middle finger. That was a measurement of the bolt of fabric, undoing the fabric of 1 L, okay? Now, 1 L, you could say, well, geez, everyone's measurement's probably different depending on how tall you are, where you are, and what country you're in. Oh, and I'm just going to stop for a minute because if you could be so kind, if you're still here and in the chat, just let me know if we have any more audio problems. I'm touching, doing nothing we shouldn't. And I'm going to put it out there. If that was anything someone was deliberately trying to do, then no, I say no to the platform. Don't you dare. I'll come after you. Joking, not joking. But anyway, so the point is, though, that you could say, well, what's an L? depending on what part of the country, you're in that time, in that medieval time. Well, apparently from all the digging that I could do, one ell of measurement was it could have been anywhere from 22 inches to 45 inches. Well, think about it. 22 inches to 45 inches. That's a big spread of what one ell could be. And it matters. The size on this does matter, because I'm going to talk about the giants. And I don't know if you remember from the previous part, or if you're just newly watching this part too, I was talking about there being an Arab traveler who did do a lot of recordings, travelogue back in the day, and around the 10th century. And he was describing the Varangians that I talked about, those really tall Vikings. And he was giving a very specific description of them, but also in the description was how tall he thought they were. And he measured it in ells. Now I'm saying that the ells, as far as I was looking around, showed it could be 22 inches or 45 inches, depending on what territory you were in. Some say it could have also been like 18 inches. But anybody showing 18 inches, the number, I think they're just trying to do that on purpose so that the narrative of how tall some of these people were looks like they were much shorter. So this is a little convoluted way to come back to when we're talking about giants and their measurements, the actual giant peoples that inhabited the earth at various stages. Every mainstream narrative, when you start doing searches, will do everything they can to say, even if you're cleverly going around like I do, asking certain questions in different ways where they might not be able to deduce why I'm asking, meaning my end result is like, how tall was this person? I want to hear that it's a giant. But if you ask anything balls out specifically as a giant, they're going to say, oh, but the people of the time, the Europeans were much shorter. So if they saw a taller person from Norway or Sweden, they just thought they were so much taller. Well, that's BS. I'll just put it right out there. So my point is that any of the searches that put the ells at a much smaller number, it's so that when you say this person was 5 ells tall, they look much shorter, like 8 feet instead of 20 is the difference, is where I'm going with this. So now let's just really fully embark on the show and get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of this show. And we're going to look at the ells, okay? Now the ells, let's see. Okay, let me get back to that Arab traveler. And then I'll get into the height in ells of these peoples coming from the north, these Norsemen. Okay, so let's get a description of these Varangians by Ahmad ibn Fadlan, a 10th century Arab diplomat from Baghdad. And he wrote in his, we'll call it like his writings, the Risalah, and this is a quote, that the Rusia, Norse traders and Varangians that he met by the Volga River were as tall as date palms. Okay, that's why I have the date palms on the cover and then the title. Blonde and ruddy. He noted that they were physically massive, heavily armed and tattooed. Dark green or blue tattoos from fingernails to neck. And it was also noted that they wore a cape off the shoulder, kind of was the style. So here's a guy from the Arab part of the world describing these Norsemen, these Vikings or Varangians, as being physically massive. Okay, so mainstream narrative and these internet searches will have you believe that like 6 foot was massive and that the typical Europeans were a little shorter. I'm not buying it. Now, he describes them as tall as date palms. Now, that's quite a statement. And then we can get into, which I did do, going down the badger hole or pulling the thread of, okay, what's a typical date palm height? Now, there are tons of date palms in the area of Iraq. And I think, or there were, but with wars and droughts, I don't know how they're doing down there. But a date palm, there's also like a dwarf version, and there's a really tall version. So those things can go up to like at least 140 feet tall, or they can be shorter if they were a dwarf version. But what did I do? On the cover, I gave the non-colorized version, so I put this version, okay? So here we see a date palm in the back, and we have these giants. So somebody else measured giant and human, but we have these giants, and look at their heads. They are as tall as date palms. So, and this human, I think this giant is giving this human some water or vice versa. There's like a a bladder or pouch of water. So I don't know who's exchanging what, but it looks like this one is giving this one some water. So they have these huge sacks filled with dates, and other friezes of the time are showing people pollinating the date palm. And in my post section, I included some modern day videos of how people, old fashioned way, climb up the tree, get the dates, and pollinate them. So all of that's consistent with these old friezes of what people might have done. So back to it, we see in this is a Mesopotamian frieze. We have giants as big as date palms. Okay, then we get into here's the same scene with color. Somebody did a whole animation. I put this in my post section too. Here we can see, if I can stop shaking, sorry. So here we have a Mesopotamians pollinating date palm trees, and then maybe a man or child given a drink of water. And the more I look at it, to me, it's a man size. But I just want to show you this in color because it's much easier to see what's going on than in just the plaster or clay or whatever friezes that we see, right? Gives a little bit better of the picture. So the one figure has a basket, at the top, which they do use to collect all of the dates, the seeds. And then there's a stick that maybe they used to beat them down. So, a lot of that checks out. It's a legit frieze of what people might have been doing in Mesopotamia. And it's showing an adult human. Because again, look at the width of the tree trunk too. That gives you an idea that these are two different types of people. Now, these are proportionally correct giants, like proportionally correct for human, but just more massive and thick, if you will, than just, a regular human size. So I'm just using that, showing that to illustrate that, yeah, this guy's description of these Varangians coming, that they were as tall as palm trees, that very well could be. If you're talking about some of these beings existing, further back, why not at that time? There are also many other accounts that we'll get into coming up in a second. So the one thing I didn't talk about at the Varangians is there's a whole arc and story that they came down. Okay, they went in and started ruling Russia, where Putin started off with his thing saying 862. And then they went down into Constantinople, into the Byzantine Empire. Now, I'm bringing that up because at some point along the way, Varangian means like pledging or oath of loyalty or whatever, that supposedly they were such great fighters, especially like the taller ones and the more massive ones. They were excellent with weapons. They supposedly always had weapons on them and nearby. And that they were such a formidable conquering force that the emperors of the Byzantine emperors hired them to be their bodyguards and basically do all of their wars for them. Now, the mainstream will say it's because they were that the Byzantine emperor needed somebody who wasn't going to be in favor of this land or that land, that they just wanted to pay these mercenaries and have them swear an oath to serve only that emperor. And that's kind of supposedly the story of what they did. And that went on and on until about 1100s or 1300s, I think. And then supposedly everything just kind of fizzled out. Supposedly the once like predominantly or all Norse crew suddenly got assimilated with Anglo-Saxons and other kind of peoples. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is that modern day, right now, here's another thing that always nagged at me when I was younger, is why the heck at the Vatican does the Pope have a force, and it's the Swiss Guard? So why are we in Rome, although, okay, Vatican is its own city-state, technically, but why are we in Italy and the Pope has a royal guard, basically, is what it looks like. It's called the Pontifical Swiss Guard at the Vatican. Why? That never made sense to me, right? So once we start looking at, okay, who's guarding the treasure and all of that and the relationship with Switzerland, it gets to be, I guess, a little bit more obvious. But here I just wanted to include it because this is modern day, and here's a height of one of the guardsmen. And this is their dress. I mean, I first saw these in person. I was there at the Vatican going through it when I was about 19 years old. And I remember going, what is this? Like, I don't get it, right? And then here they are. Look at they very much like Spanish conquistador helmets and armor and everything. So I'm like, okay, what's the height of one of these guys? We know the Pope probably isn't that tall, especially when he's hunched over. But, what is the average height of these guys? And so I found this chart, and I don't know if it's true, but I found the motto interesting. It says, fiercely and faithfully is the motto of the Swiss Guard. And I'm bringing it up because it reminds me of these Varangians, these Viking, these Norsemen who were supposedly bodyguards for who? The emperor of the Byzantine Empire, at the time, whoever it was. So anyway, while I was here, this is one of these side notes that I thought you might find interesting. I didn't know any of these things. I don't know, again, if this is a reliable source. But it says that the Swiss Guard uniforms are tailor-made and consist of over 120 pieces. The halberd is a multi-purpose weapon, sort of ancestor of the Swiss Army knife. I don't really agree with that. But anyway, you have to be supposedly a Swiss citizen, unmarried, minimum height of 174 meters, between 19 and 30 years old, a practicing Catholic, completed Swiss Army training. And then again, just for fun to round this out, it's saying the Swiss Guard has been in the service of the Pope and the Vatican for over 500 years. With 135 men, it is also known as the world's smallest army. And since 1825, most Swiss Guards have come from the canton of Valais. And so I was reading further, and it looks like that the average height is about 6'1". So no, they're not giants. Again, I'm trying to come back around to that. I think the Varangians, being described as tall as date palm trees, were basically giants, especially how they were always described in many different accounts as being fierce and just really, they were described as like you couldn't take your eyes off of them because they were proportionately like normal human, but they were so like muscular and so like perfect is what a lot of the accounts were saying. And one of the accounts was that they were 5 ells tall. Now, again, this is coming from medieval literature saying 5 ells. And so 5, okay, if we take it, I think I wrote this down so I don't have to calculate. Hang on, give me a second. 1 second, I did write it down. Oh yeah, I did write it down. Okay, I don't want to have to do the calculator while I'm on here. Okay, so if we take 5 ells at 22 inches, remember I said an L could be 22 inches up to 45 inches. Oh, and if you don't mind, just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm a little paranoid now if the sound cut out. But the L's could be, one L could be between 22 inches and 45 inches. So even just taking it at the least amount at 22 inches, 5 L's would be 9'2" tall. Okay, so one of these Varangians could be 9'2", or if you take the L dimension at 45 inches, that would be 18'9". So almost 19 feet tall. Now, again, what do you think? I think certainly they were over 9 feet tall to be so wow factor and to be such great fighters. And then, again, we got these people way up there with the date palms. So anyway, that just leaves that open to being between 9 foot and say 19 feet. Now, if we go with the mainstream media and not the manuscript accounts in the medieval times of what an L is, and we go with their like 18 inches, okay, well then fine. That still brings them to like 8 feet tall. But all of the mainstream narrative will say, oh, they were around 6 feet. Well, that's not true. We can already disprove that. And we don't need something from the Bible or the Talmud or other religious, texts to make that claim. And I wanted to find something outside of those that's a little more neutral. So here we're looking at a diplomat's account or a traveler's account. And again, some of them, were they prone to exaggeration? Maybe, maybe not. But I think in the case of, I always say his name wrong, Ahmad ibn Fadlan, I think that, he was thoroughly impressed. And you're not going to just be gobsmacked with somebody walking by at 6 feet, even if your average height is like 5'7". I wouldn't, it's about what I'm dealing with people around. But I would be in total awe if I saw somebody much higher than that, 8+. So anyway, I believe that the giants described at that time with some of these Varangians, remember, they would be the elite of their race, though. They would probably be the tallest and most fearsome of their group of peoples. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be anywhere easily from 9 feet, ranging up to 15 at the very least. Because if you looked at my show from the previous week, from a few shows back about the giants, there's evidences in different manuscripts that they were 15 feet tall. The Saracens and others coming from North Africa were 15 feet, and that was around close to 1300. And so certainly at 800, when supposedly they were taller, back then, would have also been in and around that measurement. So I see no reason why that's not true. Now, coming up, I just have a few slides that I'll prove this more about giants and heights, modern day and in antiquity and in like classical art and everything else, of why I believe no problem. Of course, there were people who were of that stature, of that height, especially when we get into modern times. It's going to be in here too, where early 1900 and pre-1900, there were articles and newspapers across all of the United States that were saying, wow, they discovered this massive skull, human skull. Oh my gosh, human bones, huge over here. And what do they all say? Yeah, we shipped them off to the Smithsonian Museum. Well, what do we know happens there? It's kind of like the old joke about whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I guess whatever gets shipped to the Smithsonian stays in the Smithsonian, and we never hear about it if it's something that's really important and that it explains the reality, the true history of where we're at, right? Oh, thanks. Oh, let me see what's going on in the chat, guys. And again, heartfelt thanks for letting me know of the debacle that went on in part one with the sound. But again, I just want to say, I'll take this opportunity to say welcome and thank you so much, Rita, Sarah, Sugar Seas, thanks for hopping in, and thanks especially if you gave the yeoman effort and hopped back on for part two. So Rita says, it's true. The European side of my family all have tall people. Tallest uncle was 7'2". Dang, that's tall. And the shortest uncle I have is 6'2". Wow. My son is 16 years old and he is 6'5". Yes. Oh, actually, yeah, one of my child's friends is that too. And anytime he comes over, it's like, look at, that's impressive, right? So you get to like 6'2" is good, but we get to 6'5", 7'2", certainly. You really notice something feels very tall. And so that's what I'm saying. Thanks for, helping substantiate my point that like any traveler going along, he's not going to be like, okay, 6'2", maybe even 7'2", be like, oh, okay, the guy's tall, but you get like 8 and above and someone's going to go like, wow, yeah. And then Rita's grandfather was 6'6". I'm 5'10". Yeah, I know. No, that's a big family and big family, tall family. Wow. My sons have so much the head walking in doorways. Yeah, LOL, that's true. We are the pygmies, LOL, exactly. I mean, that's another argument. So we could say, well, look at these things. Maybe, we're just pygmies. And I think in a lot of ways, we're pygmies. You're right. Like the old standard used to be really, really tall. And, by comparison, we're just like tiny. And what is it in one of those biblical references or one of these ancient texts that says like, I guess I'm not a big person to call it Nephilim or Nephilim. That's just not a expression I even want to dabble or deal with. I think there are many other etymological ways to call what happened. But, it says something like, oh, regular humans were like grasshoppers to these giants, right? And now I'm going to get into heights and different sizes too, of gargantuan size down to us little pygmies here, right? Anyway, but just for anybody not in the US, if you happen to watch the show, we're US centric. I mean, I'm living in the US in Florida. So when we say like your head might hit the doorway, a standard doorway height in the United States, at least modern times, is 6'8". And I don't have the conversion in centimeters. You can do that. But so if you're going to hit the door frame, yeah, if you're 6'5", you got to duck because you don't want to hit, you're close. So I can totally get it. Wow. You got to really be careful. Okay. So let's now look at, we talked about the height. Let me just make sure. So that covers just kind of little basic overview, my title about the Varangians, the Ells, and the Date Palms. Now, of course, you guys can do a much deeper dive. Like I say, a lot of this is a shallow snorkel, although sometimes I dive deeper. But do your own research too, because it's a fascinating topic. And it all started too with the city of Novgorod for me. But then again, it's like inquiring minds want to know, like the cheesy National Enquirer slogan. I wanted to know who was there before the Varangians and, where did they come from and what is the origins of this race and et cetera, right? So that just gets us into some very interesting material, plus happy little accidents of interesting facts we find along the way as we start to do a dive or go down a trail or pull a thread, as I say, right? All right, let me just make sure. So we covered why I was talking about all this stuff. Okay, now let's get into the fun part of the giants. Now, back in, again, historical documents will say there have been multiple quote unquote resets. I think there's a better word, but I can't think of it right now. But definitely with floods washing away peoples, whether it's water or mud or other things. Basically, definitely massive events that have reshaped the terrain, literally, of the planet. Now, let's get into the giants, though. So, in previous shows, they're scattered here and there. And again, at some point after this show airs, I'll put links in the description area. But if you recall, or don't, you can look at it later. One of my previous lives, I talked about giants, and I talked about the summer solstice and Stonehenge and stories in conjunction connecting with them. And another story way back, I think it was what I call it, Drinking Dragon and Stepping Stones. That one talks about the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, which has a giant's story. And again, I've got everything coming up here. Well, let me just stick to the script, my own script, if I will, because otherwise it probably will get a little messy. So let's go to my next slide. Now, the next ones that come up are going to be giants spoken of in literature, whether people call it myth or not, that's on you. A lot of some of these things that I see aren't myth, and that there's a real kernel of truth to the stories. However, we've got to be very discerning and very careful, not in a bad way, but just really look out, because anybody writing the story is probably going to be embellishing quite a bit, especially if it's anything talking about a victory, right? How many times do we see some of the things are just like vanity films, or look at me, give me an award, and got to really sift through all of that and look to the truth, cut to the truth of it. So anyway, let's look at this. So I got a whole series of things. I've got 3 pages left. I'll pick up the pace a little bit, but this is the fun part, I think. Okay, so let's look at this top, if I can get it in the screen correctly. Okay, so I want to start off, it's more or less chronological, but I'm going to jump around here and there, what's coming next on supporting evidence for the giants. So here we have Ovid. Take a good look there, wink, wink. What did we have recently? Last freaking 5-6 years, put a C at the beginning. This is where I think the real name for the whole convid, I'll say, the illness thing, just put a C in front of this, you get what I mean? Ovid's the Metamorphosis. If you check out what that's all about, you'll see why I think the kind of evil people behind, I'll just say it, the COVID crap, took it from this source here. Ovid's the Metamorphosis. But anyway, in that, he talks about, there's like creation story. He talks about there being chaos, and then out of chaos came this, and this. But anyways, a part of that was the story of the giants. And so here we have a giant. Now, I've talked about it here to go check out the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. There's a virtual tour. I'll put the link in the description area below later. But we had the Gigantomachy. So we had Zeus, and his cronies were the Olympians, the Olympic gods, who were fighting to overthrow the giants. And this is in the Gigantomachy. So the giants were the children of Gaia. I've covered this before, so I'm going to put it down in a minute. And the giants are depicted with snake legs. They're unclothed, they're wild. Whereas the Olympic gods, like Zeus, he's got his robes and everything is more dignified. And even different scenes of that frieze, they're up on horses looking down. Now, why does that matter? Because the giants were the children of Gaia. Who do we know Gaia is? Mother Earth, is Earth, the spirit of Earth. And so Gaia's children, and I'm going to jump back a minute, because the word giants comes from gigas, which comes from Gaia, meaning earthborn. Mainstream will say monsters, but no, they're beings, okay? Again, the bias against anything to help humanity is there throughout these mainstream descriptions. But anyway, Gaia is a primordial goddess who was sprung out of the void of chaos. So she's a primordial goddess that sprung out of that. And she's our creation story. So she supposedly got together with Uranus, the sky, to create the Olympic gods, who were, sons of the Titans. And she created the Titans, and she created the Cyclops and the giants. So anyhow, let's just see. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything here. But anyway, so she came out of the chaos to create Titans, Cyclops, giants, these great big things. That's the origin story, even in the Greek, myths. So anyway, that's that. So we've got giants there. even break down the word giant and ants. It's interesting, right? It's like kind of an oxymoron. There's something big and something small, but that's another story for another time. To me, ants has a whole nother etymology. If you look it up, it'll say, oh, it's something that bites or something that bites off. To me, it goes back into a commingling of the Latin word of antes, meaning coming before. But that's just me. That's for another day, and that whole story. But anyway, so we have the gigantomachy, which I talked about before, which are giants battling these Olympic gods, etc. Then we get into the Trevi Fountain. And sorry, I have this reversed. Gets me every time. Okay. So here we have Oceanus at the Trevi Fountain in Rome. And this actual statue is 19 and a half feet tall. Now, I mentioned this before in the previous show. If you've ever been to Rome, you know it. And if you don't, look at photos and look at regular people standing next to things like the Trevi Fountain or what else? Oh, shoot, I just lost it. Or the Pantheon, inside of the Pantheon and the steps of the Pantheon. Everything about Rome, when you walk through that city, is made for giants. It's colossal scale on everything. And so that alone tells me there were bigger peoples, flat out. Okay, so I have a feeling that this is a bit of a clue too, the size of this Oceanus at 19 and a half feet tall, that perhaps that was the height of the people that walked around there at the time. Also, let's go down here. We have Zeus, the stories of Zeus being at Olympia, a huge statue. I think it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, if I'm not mistaken, of the ancient world. And it was talked about, I think, that he was made of ivory and gold. And here you have little people. This is just like a simulation of what that would have looked like. And I think they took it off of this. They took the idea from here, because this is what I mentioned in the previous show too. This is an actual replica, like statue of 42 foot high Athena. Nike, the winged Nike Victory, is 6'4". So that's the size of a human in her hand. And that's at the Parthenon, replica of the Parthenon, they say. I think it really probably was a real Parthenon. It was part of the World's Fair in Nashville, Tennessee, in the 1800s. So anyway, long story short, though, they made this replica. Now, when this was first done in the early 90s, it was just left like this, like a kind of a plaster, white painted look. And I covered it in my previous show. I did happen to go see this. I saw it around 1994, I think. And I walked into this space and, and look at my post section. I put more on this. I mean, the height of a person is just still down here at the base of her foot. It's very intimidating. And to see it kind of in live action, it's in that movie. I always mention it, but it's in, what's it called? Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. They have a scene in there, in that, actual Nashville, temple there, the Parthenon there. So anyway, that's crazy. And that's known as to be the largest indoor statue in the Western world. So if you ever are in Nashville, Tennessee, go to this park. It's sitting there. It's worth it just to experience what a statue is that tall. Now, I did also mention it was very creepy, had a very bad vibe to me. I don't know if it does now. Since I've been there, they've gold leafed it or painted it, and I don't like it. It looks very garish to me. This was more impressive. But anyway, see what you think. All right, now moving along, more giants examples. We have Gilgamesh. Everyone has heard of, even if you don't know who he is or when or what or why. Gilgamesh, Sumeria, he was about 18 feet tall. Okay, there he is riding a lion, and a lot of people might know this image here. Sorry, I'm trying to reach this image. Sorry guys, I'm like a total wrong angle for this. Here, let me hold this better. So here we go. Bear with me. So there we go. On that frieze, see, that's a full-grown lion. That's not like a little cub. And somebody colored it, just what they thought the painted colors would look like. So again, sometimes the painted, even if they're off here and there with the colors, at least it helps really pop out what's going on there. So look at that. He's holding a full-grown lion. He's riding it over here. So Gilgamesh, by recorded accounts, is about 18 feet tall, okay? And then we get to over here, was that frieze I showed you earlier, and then somebody put it side by side, not me, somebody else, put it side by side, a date palm, just showing, person's height. Now, I think that date palm is probably a little bit higher than what is being described in the frieze. But anyway, see what you think. Then I found something very intriguing that I had never heard of before as I was searching all this stuff with giants and giant sculptures. Again, trying to find proof of things to corroborate how big some of these actual giants were in our history before it's been covered up and destroyed or otherwise hidden from us. And I came upon the Bayaman Buddhas of Afghanistan. Oh, you know what? I spelled that wrong. It's Bamiyan. So excuse the first word there. It should be Bamiyan, I think, Buddhas of Afghanistan. So look at those cliffs. First of all, it's very curious that we got all these openings along there, but then you can just make it out in that huge cavern or niche. There's a Buddha there. And here's a picture of a smaller one and a niche further around from that mountain. And you can see it's kind of been destroyed. Actually, no, that's still the bigger one, sorry. It's been destroyed and beat up a bit. And I put this in the post section of my channel, some interesting videos on it. So it was completely blown up, literally targeted, specifically blown up in 2001. The people who destroyed it, it's attributed to the Taliban. However, I think we all know by now who's been putting up all these different groups. So it was deliberately taken out. The reasons they give in mainstream, I don't agree with, but see how you feel about it. Now, also in my post section, though, I posted a very interesting art project that somebody did, I think out of China, an artist, and they did a recreation of what the Buddha would have looked like and projected it with light in that niche. So even though it was sadly, torn down, I mean, sadly, if it was neutral to a good meaning, I'm assuming, but then they could recreate it with light, and it's a really interesting video if you haven't seen that yet in my post section. Okay, so then we'll finish out this slide too with more giants examples. This one is a medieval depiction of David and Goliath. We know that story, right, of David and the giant Goliath. So at least according to that account in the Bible, it's talking about a giant existing. And then this one comes from the internet. I know it's traveled the internet a lot, but I think that's an authentic one. There's a lot of photos that are not, so many that are not. But I think we are dealing with one that was still authentic at that time. And these figures remind me very much of kind of what the Tartarians would look like in terms of the dress and the stature. Okay. And if you don't know about Tartaria and Tartarians, look at a couple of my previous shows or look around on the internet. A lot of people are talking about it. All right. So now I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to show this on this one slide and then pop out of order a little bit. But here we go. More evidence of giants. So here we have what the famous David attributed to, here we go, Michelangelo in the Louvre in Paris. It originally was supposedly standing outside of one of the palazios in Florence. But here, from the top of the head to the feet is 17 feet tall. He's much taller with the base. You can see some people standing there and they still don't even come up near it. But again, this idea, much like Oceanus, I think there was a reason why these statues are really, really big, kind of, again, showing that there were such large people. And also, what else did I want to say about that? I guess I'll leave it at that. Like the Oceanus and other things are really giant statues. And I do believe that they're not done by the people that they attributed them to, nor in that time frame. I think they were much older, done much older in a different era, different time. And then just in more modern, in the sense of like being 1600s or 1500s, they were just attributed to some of these other people. That's my feeling on that. But anyway, there's a lot of other YouTube sites talking about things like that too, that do a much better job explaining it than this. Then we have the Susquehannocks in Pennsylvania, and it looks to be like they're maybe about 8 feet tall. And again, there are a lot of articles and news articles back in the 1800s, early 1900s, talking about discovering some of these large statues. So there's much writings about there being a much taller native people in the territory of North America, U.S. There's also Native American stories of there being mean giants. I didn't talk about that. They're good, they're bad, they're neutral ones. But these quote unquote really cannibalistic ones were supposedly red-haired, and a group of indigenous people cornered them or blocked them off in a cave and set it on fire. So I guess these were very dastardly giants. So there's some that are good, some that are definitely evil, and then there are neutral ones. I even found these Buddhas of Bamiyan that I showed earlier when I was looking for the story of the giant of Kandahar. Supposedly that's a more modern story in recent years, of where some people were in Afghanistan, military people, and they looked in the cave, and then this supposed like really evil giant came out, massive, and then there was a fight, and I think they took that body away even. Who knows what's true? I think there might be truth to that story, So that was a giant coming out of a cave. Then we have looking in other manuscripts and maps, they're always showing these giant peoples. And wherever you go in the world, a lot of these ancient maps are surfacing from, anywhere from, 1200, maybe a little bit further back, 1500s, all kinds of, time periods. And they're showing illuminated or, drawings of giants there. Then we have Patagonia. So in Patagonia, in the mountains, we have the Patagones, and they were about 10 to 15 feet in accounts written down in the 1500s to the 1700s. So once again, 10 to 15 foot peoples found in literature. I'm all on board with it. I believe it's absolutely 100% true. Now let's get to the fun part. Basketball players with the NBA, National Basketball Association in the United States. We've got some very tall people there. The tallest one currently is 7'4". So Rita, I'm thinking of your comment at 7'2". And his name is Victor Wembanyama. He plays with the San Antonio Spurs. So he's 7'4". His little thing, Nike, took him over the sporting good company, and they have to put like a thing on it, like, they have Air Jordan, and they're trying to hype him up. So they call him the alien because they say he's kind of looks weird. He's really, really tall. And in an interview with him, he said, well, I guess it's better than the alien. I think they were going to try to call me the unicorn or something, So there's always some kind of gimmick. But anyway, here he is. And who knows? Maybe he really is an alien and it's a play on it. Whoops, wrong way. Give me a minute, guys. Okay, so here he is. Here's Victor. He's really tall there. And it's 7'4". Then I'll go backwards. Then I'm going to show you other basketball players. I haven't been standing next to Victor, but I have been in very close proximity enough to kind of get a sense of the actual height of 3 basketball players. Again, living in Miami, I saw a lot of celebrities, a lot of different people at all different times, and just running around doing what I do with my jobs and odd jobs and whatever. But anyway, here's Alonzo Mourning. He played with Miami Heat, the NBA team. He's 6'10". And he stood pretty close to me. He was going upstairs, and I was standing nearby. He is very tall, yes. And then another 6'10", Chris Anderson. He was known as the Birdman. He played with the Heat. He's 6'10". He's the white dude there, number 11. Now he's fully tattooed up the arms. And at the time I saw him, it's a funny story, true story. I was sitting in a coffee shop. I don't want to give him credit, but it was a well-known chain. And I was sitting there doing something, getting organized. I don't know what I was doing. But anyway, I looked out the window and I'm like, uh-oh, why are these big, long cameras, these big old-fashioned, press cameras? There were these guys hiding behind a car with a huge camera shooting in through the window. And I'm like, what are they doing? This is so stupid. And then I'm like, oh, somebody famous must be nearby. Well, right after I looked there, out of my periphery, I'm sitting at a little table. Out of my periphery, I just see a long arm go by, and it's fully tattooed. And the proportion of it was so funny because it wasn't like the normal part of the arm you would see. And then I looked up, and sure enough, it was this Chris Anderson. So he seemed like a nice guy when he came in the coffee shop. But anyway, that's like the closest I have been to one of these really tall people. So he is, 6'10". And then we have, this one is the first basketball player, professional player I saw in my life back in the 90s, I guess. And it's Patrick Ewing. Now this guy, he's 7 feet tall. I saw him at a distance in the airport, and he was wearing, at the time, it was Louis Vuitton was a big thing. I'm not promoting any brands, but it was a big deal. So he's in a full black leather trench coat that goes down to the floor, carrying like a Louis Vuitton briefcase. And that length of the trench coat plus his height at 7 feet, I mean, he just looked endlessly tall. I'm like, this is the tallest person I've seen in my life, So anyway, just personal side story. But anyway, the presence of these players, and even in people's family, like in Rita's family, is a testament to, there are genes within some families. And it's a common thing to be 7 feet plus. And no, it's not a case of, what does mainstream try to always say? It's a case of giganticism or whatever they call it, like some stray gene. No, this was a part of who we were. This is nothing wrong with it. It's just like Rita was saying, we're the pygmies, just certain ones of us got that DNA encoded height gene, All right, so here's one more page talking about giants, and I'll wrap it up soon. Anyway, so here I'm going to just read this story off camera for a minute. So this goes back to the Northern Ireland Giants Causeway story I mentioned earlier. And if I can read it here, let me put it in the light. And it's a legend says that, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Fionn Mac Cumahale built the Giant's Causeway to reach Scotland and challenge the giant Brennan Donner. When Fionn realized his rival's enormous size, his clever wife, I can't read it from here, I think Unach, disguised him as a baby. Terrified by the child's size, Benandonner fled, tearing up the causeway and leaving its remnants behind. So that's a funny little story about these giants. So supposedly one giant built the causeway from North Ireland to Scotland, like to see his girlfriend. And anyway, and then somehow it got torn up. So if you look at my previous show, Drinking Dragon and and Stepping Stones, I show you images and of these like hexagonal, perfect, some will say it's geological formations. I think a little bit more is going on there. So anyway, check that out. This is that 15-foot North African giant referred to in a manuscript, I think from the 1300s. It's located in an archaeological museum in Salisbury Plain or Wiltshire in England, where Stonehenge is. And it talks about a Merlin origin story of where a young Merlin did some incantations to levitate the stones. And he had help from North African giants who were 15 feet tall to help position and move the stones when needed in between the incantations. Then we have the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, or some tales call it Jack the Giant Killer, where, we've got Jack and a giant and the giant wife of the giant, right? So these stories, this story alone is so ingrained in all of our culture. And then you have the giant story universally out, throughout everywhere, story of giants. So for anybody, especially if you just look up a mainstream, internet search to say that they didn't exist, how can you refute that? How can anybody not believe that they were giants? Come on, it's time to open the eyes and wake up a bit. Then we have fun. We have any Harry Potter fans. The Hagrid, I'm like, yeah, there's a giant in there. How tall was he supposedly? So he was supposedly 11 foot. Oh, and this is just depicting Brennan Donner from Scotland and Fionn Mac Cumahale from Ireland. And then we have Chewie in Star Wars, 7'6". And that brings us to Sasquatch. Sasquatch does exist. I can attest to it. I had an experience when I was about 14 and a few after that, actually. And so many other people are coming forward and telling their stories. And some of those have been dormant memories, purposefully cut off until about now. So I started having recall on my experience around 2020 and 2021. It started coming in heavy, how many times I may have had experiences or encounters with seeing a Sasquatch. And for a lot of people, that's one of the first steps to wake them up. That's what they're here for. When society gets totally out of balance, like it did back in 2020 with, what was going on with the whole COVID thing, that's a time where a lot of people started seeing them or remember seeing them and having encounters, because it's time for everybody to kind of really wake up and see the world for what it really is and for what it really isn't. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing shows like this. So again, take it or leave it, whatever I say. But I know I'm just supposed to put this forth. And these are just little nuggets and kernels of truth in there. I think there's a particle of truth in everything, even that everybody says, because as many of there are that are us, we are facets of the one. And we see things in a certain way. And there's usually at least a little particle of truth in there. And that's why I do like to look at what everybody says and listen to what everybody says. And then whatever kind of pings or resonates with us, we know that's true for us. So it's true, right? Anyhow, that's where this whole tour led me. So thanks for hanging in there if you've been able to listen to all of this. And I think that's about it, unless anybody has anything else to say. And I do truly hope the sound has held all this long. I really would not want to do a part 3, but hey, I'll do the whole show over again if I have to, but hopefully it's holding. So assuming that we're good, I'm done with what I wanted, my little spiel, what I wanted to say. If anybody has anything else to add and chat, now's the time. And if not, I think, I have different cards, but I think I just wanted to pull one from the plants again, just feeling that, and see if that means anything to anyone. If you're, not into oracle cards, now's the time to exit And otherwise, let's just see what comes up. Oh, Sarah says, thank you, Varley. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you guys being here, whether it's in spirit, if you can real-time watch us or watch the replay, whatever. Okay, we got one card. Yeah, I think I'll just go with this. I don't know much about this one whatsoever, but let me hold it up. It's called Myrtle. And this is what it looks like. It's pretty. And that's just some of the parts and pieces. And this is coming from that deck called the 50 Plants That Heal. That's what it looks like. And I'll put the description, I'll put the references below. So let's just see if anything catches our eye about Myrtle. I'm not getting anything off of the images. Sarah says, beautiful, thanks. Rita says, indeed, thank you, Varley. Hope everyone has a good night. You too, friend. Let's see. So this one, it's a shrub. Well, since we're talking about height, let's just look at it. Myrtus communis. It's a shrub growing to a height of 1 to 3 meters, about 3 1/4 to 9 3/4 foot tall. And it's found, oh, this makes sense, this card. So it's found all around the Mediterranean. And a lot of what we were talking about had to do with the Mediterranean. And what does it say? Okay, the rest, I'm not finding anything. It's just saying its white flowers have numerous stamens like miniature fireworks. That's true. That's the impression I got off of it. And it says the fruits, small dark berries, survive on branches for a long time. And it's a balsamic. This is what they say that has some beneficial properties. Again, this is just what they say. Do your own research on it. But supposedly it can work as a balsamic and a disinfectant. And it can help heal wounds. So there you go. It can also be the oil of the leaves. The essential oil of the leaves can be a powerful bactericide. Let's see. It is sometimes advocated as a venomous and lymphatic decongestant. Let's see. So it can do a lot of things. And you can use it as an infusion, a syrup, or it says external. You can do a myrtle bath. They still say, it says still used in Southern Europe to treat sprains, bumps, and bruises following a fall. So anyway, that's a lot of stuff I didn't know about, and maybe something in there piques your interest. Like everything, when you get into plants and plant medicine, there's some cases where it can be toxic. You got to really be careful. But so many of them have a positive benefit for our health, and it's no accident. Whatever region you might live in, there's probably plants that grow around locally that will be good for you. And, whether it's the leaf, the berry, the bark, the sap, tinctures, there's oils, there's topical uses for these things, even taking some of the resin sometimes and making poultices. I mean, it's just a fascinating world if you're not familiar with it. Oh, and I forgot the crystal of the day, and I'll close up with this one. Crystal of the day, if I can get it off my neck, I'll do it. It's going to be labradorite, and it's called the stone of magic. And since we touched a little bit on that giant story again at Stonehenge and with Merlin, I was just feeling like the appropriate stone. Now, this particular specimen comes from Australia, from a good group of people that had a lot of really good energy, and I trust they're finding it, and when they ship it out, they do it with love. You feel the good energy of it. But anyway, this is just a pendant that I like because on one side, the labradorite is rough. It's left in its natural stone state. But on the other side, it's got the flash. Let me see if I can do this without the glare. It's polished, and actually, I don't think, again, pardon my shaking, doesn't help. But you see the flash in there? There's a little bit of the flash. Hard to tell. There we go. It's got a little bit of the golden flash. And so I wanted to include this too because a lot of the colors, if I can find my cover sheet quick enough, hang on. A lot of the colors associated when I was doing the search, it was just coming up blues and yellows, and like Swedish flag is blue and yellow. And we talked about the Varangians coming from the Swedish territory originally before they went over to Russia. So anyway, that's just where I want to leave that. So I so appreciate each and every one of you and wish you a beautiful night, beautiful now, beautiful day, depending on where you are. And I guess, we'll see what pops up next week. As always, if any of this inspires you or you had any little bells go off, aha moments, if you ever have any recommendations for a next show topic, I'm always open to it. If it makes sense, I'll do it. And otherwise, we'll just see what flows on in, right? Okay, well, have, like I said, tremendous peace and love, and thanks to all of you. Till next time, bye.